Being in debt or physically sick or both is draining. Today's guest on the show used her financial freedom and her better health as her superpower to build a business empire.
1, 2, 3, 4.
This is StewardShift, a show that gives you the tools you need to get the most of your best resources. Your money, your mind, your body, your time.
Welcome back to the StewardShift Show. My name is Troy Solomon Levy, and I am your host. I'm so excited because on this episode of StewardShift, we have a very, very special guest. Anytime I come across someone who is deciding to live their life debt-free, first of all, I'm always blown away and I'm always excited. I'm rooting them on. And I have a very special guest, friend of mine, who is on, Rebecca Eloisa. Welcome to StewardShift.
Hey, Troy. Hey, everyone listening. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. Thank you so much for being on with us. Rebecca, you have such a wonderful story, and I think our audience can really benefit from hearing your story of being debt-free, your story of turning your side hustle into a full-time gig that you're currently working in right now, your story of tragedy to triumph. And let's start. I mean, there's so much about your story. We got to start somewhere. So tell us a little bit about your debt journey. What kind of debt did you have and how much debt did you have?
Okay, so my debt journey, majority of my debt was student loans and credit card debt. And I had about $13,000 or so of that. I went to the University of Southern California, a very expensive school, but honestly, through the grace of God and some really smart moves on behalf of my parents, financial aid and all of that, I was able to graduate with $13K in debt. But I actually started paying off my loans while I was still an undergrad.
Rebecca, so you're telling me that as you were a student, that you began paying, like you didn't wait for the interest to kick in or for them to send you a letter or to start making phone calls. I didn't start paying my debts off until they made a phone call. You're telling me that that wasn't your story. You started while you were still a student.
I did. And the reason for that, because I started interning with Patrice Washington. Now a lot of people may know her as the Money Maven. She has a YouTube channel and a pretty awesome wealth building course and community. And I started interning with her. I knew nothing about money. I honestly was subpar in math. And this is getting vulnerable. But throughout school, I always ranked below average for the state level in mathematics. I felt like I was dyslexic when it came to looking at numbers. So when it came to money, I was even more afraid, budgeting, balancing my different expenses, and especially taking out loans because I was like, I don't even know what this percent means. What does that mean? How much am I have to pay? I don't know. So I did everything pretty blindly. But when I started working for Patrice, I learned that you can make some pretty, there's some pivotal moments in life where you can make decisions that can really impact your wealth, which also impacts your freedom and your quality of life. So I really just did whatever she told me to do or whatever I read in her books and started making those changes.
That's awesome. And I mean, I'm low-key kind of jealous over here because it took me so long to do that. How long exactly did it take you to pay these off?
It took me about 9 months. And so it was towards the very end of my senior year. And then I started to pay off my loans, and about 9 months later, I was debt-free. And that was just also just because I hustled a lot. Because even though $13,000 may not seem like a lot compared to other people's debt that they have, I was still a student and I was making a minimum wage, essentially. So I did have to make a lot of sacrifices to eventually really just put money towards my debt.
No, don't even we're not going to devalue that at all. 13K. First of all, 13K, even in today's world, if for any grown person, that's a lot, right? But I get it. You were a student and that's excellent. You did a really, really great job doing that. I'm in disbelief that a student was able to pay off $13K while they were still a student, like before graduation.
Thank you. While I was preparing for this interview, I was thinking back to what inside me really made me want to pay this off. And at the time, I didn't know this. I know this now, years later, but at the time, I actually had an autoimmune disease. And I was struggling with the symptoms without actually knowing that I was, I guess, what you could say sick. Now I say healed, like I'm saying healing. I'm not saying sick, but at the time I didn't know. And so I had very low energy levels when I would intern or when I started working like a full-time job. I was constantly exhausted. I was kind of like emotional. I felt very sensitive. And I felt like I wasn't able to give a lot of myself that I saw that other students or like my peers were giving to the job and to schoolwork and stuff. And so I knew, like, I don't think I can work a normal 9 to 5. And I don't think my energy levels, I don't think I can afford to live on the hamster wheel, to be stuck on that hamster wheel. Just physically, I feel like my body would deteriorate. And so I think subconsciously I knew that at the time. I guess my body, the wisdom of like my body knew that. And so it's like, Rebecca, like we have to find a way to where you don't have to answer to, I guess, like a debt collectors. You don't have to answer to if a boss tells you, yeah, you can't have time off today, even if you're tired or sick, you can't. I can't afford to have to go into work. So I knew that it would, I guess my health would deteriorate. And I just thought I was weak at the time. Like, I'm just weak and I'm whiny and I'm soft. But now I know I was diagnosed with this autoimmune disease, and I learned, which I can touch on more later, but I learned how to manage it, how to make some health tweaks to where now I feel amazing and I have a lot more energy than like other people who I guess are perfectly healthy.
Yeah. Now, as a young person, as a college student, paying off debt, what were some of the discouragements you might have had as you were paying this stuff off? Were there any challenges or obstacles towards paying the debt off?
Yes. So one was something I heard a lot was like, you work too much. Because what I was doing at the time, now it sounds a bit extreme, but I had like 2, I guess, part-time jobs because I wasn't able to actually fully work. I couldn't find like a full-time job right out of college. So I was like an executive assistant. And then I was also doing like social media freelance stuff on the side. And so I graduated in Los Angeles. My job was in Los Angeles, but my parents lived on the central coast of California, which is about 3 hours north of Los Angeles. And it was the cheapest place to live. And so I moved back home with my parents, but I would drive 3 hours to Los Angeles during the week, maybe like 5 times a week. Because when I did the math, it was cheaper to live at home for free versus getting a spot in Los Angeles. And so I would say that is one massive sacrifice that I made. And people thought I was crazy. They're like, you're like freshly out of school, like live in LA. Like it's okay if you live off of credit cards for a bit, like because your income's going to increase as you get older, which I guess is true. But I felt at the time that I didn't want to pay interest to these credit card companies. I didn't want to feel enslaved to them. I wanted to get out of debt as quickly as possible so I can start building wealth, become a digital nomad, live in Bali, travel the world like I would see influencers online doing.
Nice. Now, for someone who's like right now, they feel so inspired by your journey. We're going to continue with the interview, but I just want you to give one tip to someone who is scared to get started. They've been delaying it. They've been kicking the can down the road. They haven't gotten started. What's one thing that you would say to that person right now?
I would say do a deep dive into your numbers. So that means pull up all of your accounts, all of your credit cards, your bank account, any savings account that you may have, and lay it all out. So you open all the tabs on your computer and see exactly where you are. So how much debt do you have combined? How much savings do you have? And that will honestly give you some peace. It'll freak you out in the beginning, especially if you're not in a healthy place like I was. But there's something about the truth will set you free. And so part of that builds character, just to be able to look at your numbers, face the pain and face the fear, and then come up with a strategic game plan on how to get to where you want to go.
Rebecca, that's going to set somebody free right now. I know it. You just helped someone get started on their journey, and I love every second of it. Share with that person also how you felt on that last payment. Was it joyful? Was it scary? Was it positive, negative? That very last debt payment, how did you feel?
Yeah, that very last debt payment, I remember the day. It was sunny and it was warm. And I was still living at home, and I was like, I have to go drive 3 hours to work on Monday. But that last payment just felt amazing. I just felt so free. And I think what is even more impactful was the first payment that I paid to myself into my savings account that didn't have to go to debt. Because up until then, I felt like all my hours, my time that I've been putting into work, the fruit of my labor was just going to these credit cards and going to student loans. But that first payment I made into my savings account for my dream, which was to eventually start a business and to move to Los Angeles, that felt like power. It's like when Thanos gets all the infinity rings in Marvel, and it's just like, yes, that's how I felt. Like, I have the power.
Good. Now, I know I heard you mention that, math wasn't your strongest point, and, you kind of struggled in that way when it came to money earlier in your life. And you also laid everything out you suggested for someone to get started, just like see what it is, open up the tabs, so on and so forth. What role did budgeting play for you in your debt-free journey? Was it just like random payments, or if I got like a little bit of money, okay, well, I'm just going to toss it here? Or was it very, very intentional in terms of budgeting?
Yeah. So I guess I'll start by saying something. If anybody else struggles with this issue, one thing that helped me a lot was listening to a different financial content creators. So one of them obviously was Dave Ramsey. While I would drive 3 hours from the Central Coast to Los Angeles, I would just have his radio show playing or his YouTube videos playing. And I would hear people going through their different stories and being in their different situations. And I would learn from them and then start applying these things to my life. So I got ideas. One of the ideas I got was to start building a community of people who were where I wanted to be. And especially if you can't find that community, look into a church. And he gave that advice to somebody. And he says, if you can't find a community, go to church. Start talking to people. Let them know what you're struggling through. And people there, they love to help. And so you may find your first community there. So I did that. Another one was all the different side hustle ideas, which is like the DoorDashes, the Ubers, and all of that. I started DoorDashing, and then also eventually learning about building a business and stuff. And so I was able to really educate myself during that time, and I kind of became obsessed. So during that time, I also learned how to budget from his videos, from Patrice Washington's videos. Anthony O'Neill at the time was starting to make some videos under the Dave Ramsey umbrella. And so listening to all these Graham Stephan, all these different YouTubers, I learned how to kind of manage my money and budget. And so the way that my budget was set up was just I had all my necessities out, and I would pull everything out in cash. Because I was paying off debt, I wasn't using credit cards at the time, so no points and stuff. I've grown and I have a different strategy today. But at the time, I was not using credit cards at all. I did what Dave Ramsey said, $1,000 emergency fund, and which I could because my expenses were so low at the time. And then I would put everything else towards my debt using the debt snowball method. And even on holidays, when I knew for DoorDashing, we'd get more money, I would go 4th of July, DoorDash, Thanksgiving, DoorDash, all these different holidays. And 100% of that would go towards debt. I think for me, it hurt because it's a huge sacrifice, but I needed it to hurt to keep me excited about it. I needed the pain to remind me to not get comfortable until the mission was completed.
Got it. Now, your understanding of stewardship, and I'll just quickly define for our audience, meaning taking care of something or someone, but let's say something in this case, which is the resource of money, taking care of that on behalf of somebody else. How has your concept of stewardship just informed your debt-free journey?
Yeah. So I would say I hadn't really thought about stewardship. I almost said StewardShift. I hadn't thought of stewardship until I started my wealth building journey. My debt-free journey was very self-motivated because I wanted to live this like traveled nomad life. Like I wanted to be free. I wanted to be rich. But when it came to wealth building, which is like really investing, building a business, I realized how much a positive effect you can have when you are financially stable. So an example would be being able to create jobs. So building a business like I did. And we have a team of about 6 really amazing creators, and we employ them like almost full time. And just seeing like the effect that we've had like on their families and the different goals they're able to reach, like they're able to pay off debt, or they're able to save up to go to nursing school, or get a speaking professional to help their child speak better, or like get up to par to where they're supposed to be. That has been really amazing, and I feel like that part of that is stewardship. And then also when it comes to the ability to give back to a church community who you literally go to church for free. You get music. Sometimes you get food, and then you leave. You don't have to pay anything. So it's like, wow, that's not free. So if you enjoy your church, then you're able to give back, and you're able to tithe, and even maybe do more than the 10%. And so that I feel like is another amazing thing you're able to do. I've been able to send my little brother and sister like $100 here and there if I know they have like something fun that they're doing. And or like while they were in college after I was, and I know when you're a struggling student how hard that can be. And so it's fun. It gives you options, and one of the big options is the ability to help others, as well as like especially even helping your own family, because I guess wealth building, part of that and part of stewardship is legacy, and so the ability to pay for I guess life insurance, just in case something happens to you, as a gift to your family, or the ability to invest like in your IRAs and your 401ks and things and different vehicles that may outlast you, that your kids and your kids' can start to take advantage of. So it is just amazing how much freedom and options being financially stable can bring you. And I think the sacrifice is definitely worth it.
You know, you mentioned freedom on this side of being debt free, and I want to come back to your business in just a second, because I'm very interested and intrigued in what you've built for yourself and for others. But what are some things that you've been able to do on this side of being debt free that you don't think you would have been able to do if you had never kind of taken that journey for yourself?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things I would say is investing in my physical and emotional health. And I know that you had, I guess, like a health expert on a few weeks back, and I really enjoyed her story. But investing in my health, I would say, multiplied my income and my earning potential and my quality of life. And so one thing I ended up doing, this is part of my story. So, and this is how I know that paying off debt, building wealth was tied to my health. This is what made me realize it. A couple years ago, so around the pandemic time, I was working for a film studio in Hollywood full time. And it was an amazing job. I loved my team. I loved my coworkers. but we were working remote. The pandemic was happening. And I started to realize I had these different symptoms. Like my hair was falling out. I was probably 15, 20 pounds heavier than I am today. Like my normal walking weight. I had like terrible cystic acne on my face, and everything kind of felt like it just happened overnight. Mood fluctuations, very fatigued. And so one morning I woke up really early and decided to go for a walk before it was time to go into work and time to log in onto Zoom and stuff. So I decided to go for a walk, and I was at a stop sign and there were cars zooming by, and I was like leaning against the stop sign pole, waiting for the cars to slow down. And I just had this thought, what if I step in front of one of these cars right now? Then I could rest. And I was thinking about it. And then all of a sudden I felt like I had like a come to, like I woke up and I was like, whoa, that's the first time you've ever had one of these thoughts, Rebecca. Something's wrong. What is it? Something needs to change because this is your life. And so after that, I decided to quit everything. This is maybe 3 or 4 years after college. So I decided to quit everything. I quit my job, which I'd worked so hard for. I was in a very long-term, serious relationship engagement at the time. And I took a break from that. I was living in Los Angeles. I ended up ending my lease and moving back home with my parents. And thankfully, I was debt-free by this time. And so I had a savings account that I was able to live off of. And I closed my laptop and I was like, I need to rest. And it was that moment that made me realize I needed to invest in my health. I thought I was healthy. I was vegan at the time. I drank green drinks and smoothies. But what I ended up doing was going to a doctor who is now a YouTube doctor. She's at almost 2 million subscribers. At the time, she wasn't. But I went to a really amazing doctor named Dr. Rajshri at OC Integrative. And we did a full panel of blood work, gut testing, allergy testing, a full lay of the land of my body. And she really specializes in getting you to optimal health. We use a natural approach, but then if that doesn't work, then she prescribes medication. And during that time, I found out that I had an autoimmune disease called Hashimoto's, and I had a ton of vitamin deficiencies. And these are things that I think I found out that a lot of Americans actually struggle with. And so you may think, oh, being tired is part of my personality. I need more coffee. I need this, I need that. But really, you may be unbalanced when it comes to your vitamin levels. You may have overgrowth of bacteria in your gut, or you may be eating something every day that you have a low grade allergy to. So during this time, I was able to financially invest in this doctor, and she wasn't cheap. She was quite expensive. And it was uncomfortable because it was the most amount of money I had spent on something like that, especially health related. And it was maybe about a journey of about up until now. We just barely had one of our last meetings, but being able to invest in my health greatly increased the quality of my life. Within a couple months of working with her, just making small tweaks and addressing allergies and different deficiencies, I lost extra weight like that. My energy levels went up. I learned my triggers. My mood stabilized. I thought, I'm just naturally emotional, but really I'm not. I just needed some stability in these different areas. And it was just all health related and hormonal. And so being able to invest in that, I think, was one of my biggest purchases, and something that brought me that was the biggest return, I would say, on my investment.
Rebecca, this is so important because, and I want our audience to understand the connection between financial wellness and physical wellness, because you, Rebecca, were able to get yourself into a good financial place. You were then able to take care of your body. Mm-hmm. And there's definitely a connection between financial wellness and physical wellness. Please don't believe that if you aren't taking care of your finances, that you can go and just get any doctor, the best doctors that could, or health professionals that you can possibly find. No, that doesn't happen. If you're poor, generally speaking, I hate this fact, but if you're poor, especially in America, then you're likely not going to be physically well. But if you are financially free, you're debt free, got your stuff together, then you can take that extra step that Rebecca took in taking care of her physical health. And I think that that's a very, very important lesson for all of us, Rebecca. And kudos to you for taking care of your health. I'm glad you're in a better place.
Thank you. Yes. And that to me was one of the most important things, because when you are physically healthy, at least for me, it's as a woman who wants to have children one day, like you want to be optimal for that, not only to give your children the best health future that they have, but also so afterwards you can have energy and feel good and hang out and play with them and be a very as active as you were before, if not more. And so that was really important to me. And then also I took time to invest in my mental health as well, and started doing therapy. And this is all a journey. It was over years that I did this. It wasn't like, oh, I have $1 million, I'm going to do these things all of a sudden. It was over years of saving and then investing, saving and then investing in this. And during that time, up until today, really, I've still lived below my means, which I think is really important. So even if the business starts performing really well, I'm still driving my 2007 car that I drove in college, and it has some issues. So I probably need to get an upgrade soon, but I'm still driving that same car. Where I choose to live and what I choose to buy, I'm still intentionally living below my means, because I know I want to be able to continue investing in my health, in my physical health, my mental health, and whatever else I need to in order to give myself a solid foundation for future family and all of that.
I love it. And there's no shame in that game, Rebecca. I still drive a 2009 car. So there's no shame in it at all. Not one bit. So, and I'm going to drive that till the wheels fall off. And if your car's wheels are falling off, okay, well, maybe it's time to get something else. But there's no shame in that. That's okay.
It's actually kind of fun, because it feels good it feels good to not have a car payment, for one. It's one of the best feelings in the world, in my opinion. And it's kind of funny because people are surprised by the car I drive, because they're like, wait, Becca has a business and she does travels and does this stuff, but that's your car? And I'm like, yeah. And I get to talk about my debt-free journey and my wealth building journey and why I'm still driving it, why I do what I do.
This is great. Now, tell me, Rebecca, how did you end up in Asia for several months? Close to a year, I think, right?
Yeah. So I was back and forth in Southeast Asia for about 7 months. And that was, I guess, an experiment to see if I could become a digital nomad. And it worked. I was able to build my business to a point where my clients didn't need me around the clock 24/7. And while I was there, I learned something that was really interesting that I think your audience would benefit from. And there are a lot of places around the world that you can live that are affordable to live in, especially if you're making the US dollar. And so if you're earning the US dollar and working remote, then there's South America, there's Mexico, there's Southeast Asia. And when I was living in Bali, my expenses were about $1,500 a month, including rent, food, and gas, and excursions. And so it's an amazing place. If you're able to get a remote job, and even if you're paying off debt, you can go and live in a place like Bali, live life to the fullest without really having to give up your comforts, and stack your cash, build your savings, pay off your debt for a minimal price. You just have to get there. Tickets come.
Where do I sign up? How do I do it? No. All right. So look, you've built an empire. You've been building a business for the past several years, and it's very, very intriguing. I love it. But tell me a little bit about Kona Rise Digital.
Yeah. Okay. So at Kona Rise, we are a social media marketing agency, and we work with mission-driven content creators who do podcasts. So they need podcasts and long-form YouTube videos. We really help them build up their YouTube channel. So it's a lot of YouTube management, and then we also do social media management. It's helping them manage their YouTube channel and amplify it across different platforms. So that's one side of the business. That's the agency. So we work with content creators like yourself, or like Stefan Speaks, Anthony O'Neill, Dr. Bobby Price, like those types of content creators that talk directly to camera. And then the other side of the business is where really like one of my favorite things to do. And it's a course called Attract Your Tribe Academy. And what that is for are for people who want to become content creators or influencers. Maybe they have a really small following, but they don't have the funds to hire a full-on social media agency. So I take them through a 10-week course with a small group, maybe 10, 20 of us, and teach them for 10 weeks everything that I learned while working at Good Morning America, everything I learned going to like doing business school at USC, and everything we do in my agency. And so I teach them how to do that. And so that's the second part. And we're actually launching the next cohort in September. It's usually each year around September. And so that's the second part of the business.
All right, y'all. So you heard it. Please make sure you enroll in this course, or here, Rebecca, we'll put your stuff in the description and whatnot. Make sure people can reach out to you if possible. Rebecca, I'm so proud of what you've built. This is excellent. Yeah, this is great. I just really enjoy hearing your journey. This is really, really good. But you do have a piece of scripture that has been like particularly meaningful to you over the past however long. Share that with us. We really want to know like what that foundation is that really drives you.
Yeah, so I love Joel 2:25, and it goes like this. I will restore to you the years that the locusts have eaten. And I love that because no matter where you are financially in your life, in your marriage, with your kids, it doesn't have to stay that way if you're in a negative place. It can get better, and it can be restored to even better than the glory days, or even better than how it was in the very beginning. And so I really like that. Even with debt, if you've been in debt and your credit cards have been racking up and you've been kind of ignoring it for the last 2 or 3 years, and it's just your interest is getting higher and higher, if you claim this promise, then, and you know, like have a relationship with the Lord, like I believe that it can be restored. Your wealth can be restored to even better than it was before. And so that's one of my favorite things. It's like, it's never too late to start investing, never too late to start paying off debt, to change your career, to try to increase your income. And so that's one of my favorite verses.
Look, I know that verse was for the audience, but can I claim that for myself also?
Oh,
is
yeah.
that all right?
Claim it.
This is such a powerful, powerful verse. And I'm going to be stating that for the rest of this week, that God will restore the years that the locusts have eaten. So thank you for that text. Now, just a couple more things. What's your bottom line? Our audience knows that for here, this show, StewardShift, there's a bottom line that everyone, like, you know, if you're not doing what is being said on this episode, then you're losing out on this. Or if you are doing something that's really just kind of negative, then here's how that's going to negatively affect you in terms of the dollar, the bottom line. Can you share that with us?
Yeah. So in terms of money, so like a dollar amount?
Yeah, if you have one.
Okay. So I'll say if you have about $15,000 in debt, then over the next 5 years or so, that could cost you $25,000 or more that could have been invested. And so I look at it as having either $15,000 in credit card debt or being able to have $15,000 invested in something like index funds with like a 10% return. So after 5 years with a credit card, that's going to cost you about $25K in interest, versus if you had that invested in something like index funds, then you are not just going to have your $15K that you started with, but you're going to have almost like an extra like $5,000 that is added without you even touching it. And so when it comes to paying off debt, doing what you can to pay off debt faster and earlier, there is a big difference versus if you were able to then invest that money, but it's not too late. So that, I guess that is what people have that's what you may lose or gain depending on your decisions that you make today.
Got it. Got it. Last thing, give us a shift that someone right now who's been listening and watching that they can make in their lives, that they can take away from this episode. What is something that people can do to nudge themselves in the right direction?
So I'm going to say, I love content creation, content creators. So I'm going to say, go to YouTube, find a wealth building content creator that you identify with. Graham Stephan, StewardShift, Anthony O'Neill, Dave Ramsey. Find someone who you resonate with in their story and listen to them. Binge watch their episodes and increase your financial education. And that is going to help make your wealth building journey and your debt payoff journey a lot more fun.
Great, great. Rebecca, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I know the audience is blessed. I know that this has been very, very helpful to someone who's maybe been afraid to start, and they're going to start from now on. Maybe someone has been struggling with their health and they're trying to figure it out, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I know I need to get my health together and my finances together. I'm going to be financially free so that my physical body can, and even my mind can work at its optimal standard. So you're setting people free, and I really, really appreciate you sharing your journey with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Troy.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much. So maybe you found yourself in debt like Rebecca, and maybe a low income as she had back then as well. I have the perfect video for you. It's called 10 high paying jobs that do not require a degree. No degree. That means you're saving time, you're saving money, you're saving energy. Check it out.